Look, I totally get it. You're working harder than anyone. You're putting in the hours. Your hustle game is on point. You're committed. You're dedicated. So why aren't you seeing results quicker? Like, why aren't you ascending the ladder faster? Well, today I've got answers. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Success Sundays with Harrison. I'm your host, Harrison Wilder. I'm a corporate strategist and entrepreneur with an executive MBA from the George Washington University. I've managed 2 multi-million-dollar companies, and I advise top-level executives from a variety of industries. In this show, you'll find practical insights that will help you succeed as a leader in today's business environment. If you're serious about developing your skills as an executive, this is the place for you. Enjoy today's episode. This literally happened on the way into the office. A man was standing outside in the hallway, and he asked me what my podcast was about. And so naturally, I answered his question. He seemed genuinely interested. So I told him about you guys and how I help people. And then, because he was standing outside the studio, I asked him, do you have a podcast as well? And he answered me. He said, I work for a living. And intrigued, I said, Is that the name of your podcast? That you work for a living? He said, no. I actually do work for a living. And then he scowled at me and walked off. And of course, what he meant is that he works with his hands. And like many people, he's bought into the work ethic, right? That hard work is what's required in order to create true value and add value to the world and be paid for it. Of course, what he meant is that he works with his hands. And like many people, he's been taught that financial reward should come only from hard work. So naturally, he might resent the fact that I'm spending 30 minutes a week talking into a microphone and commanding more income than he probably commands in the next month. So today, I want to expose the myth that hard work equals more money. Because as executive and entrepreneurs, you need to know the truth that more value equals more money. And our society doesn't assign the most value to hard work. The truth is, if you want to attract more income, that you need to ascend the value ladder and do the kind of work that society values the most. One of my mentors, Myron Golden, shared with me that there are 4 levels of value, and the lowest level, the level that society has assigned the least amount of value to, is the implementation level. Now, at the implementation level, the lowest level of value, people work with their hands. And when they work with their hands, this is important work, right? These are the people who are making the economy work. But society, not me, society has capped their earnings so that the most that you can expect for implementation work is to make about $60,000 a year. Right, so implementation workers are out there, they're working with their hands, they're working hard, earning up to about $60,000 a year, and they have bought into the lie that if they work harder, then they can make more money. So that's what the lowest level of value, again, not my lowest level of value, but what society has deemed the lowest level of value and compensates the least amount of money for is implementation work. So if you go up one level of value from there, you get up to the unification level of value. Now, these are people who are in charge of departments or maybe in charge of a team. These are managers. These are people who are unifying people, right? So they're helping bring other labor workers together, right? People who are working with their hands and managing them, right? And so as a manager, as a unifier, you can command a bit more money. This is assigned a larger value by society. You can make up to $300,000 a year by managing people. Now, to some of you, that may sound like like a good deal of money. Like, hey, yeah, that's great. I can command $300,000. But man, managers that are making $300,000 are working their tails off, right? And managing people is not easy. If you've ever had a job in management, like I have, that herding sheep is not the easiest thing to do in the world. So they're working, putting a lot of hours, endless, countless meetings, bouncing around from meeting to meeting to meeting, trying to get their own implementation work done on the side, and all the communication it requires. But $300,000 a year, so it's higher work than the implementation level, at the unification level, but still a cap of about $300,000 a year. And most people who are unifiers have bought into the lie that more education means that you can make more money. So if you want to really attract wealth, then you need to get a higher degree, right? So how many of you out there have been taught that your whole life? Like, go to college, get a good job with a good pension, or with does anybody do pensions anymore? With a good retirement plan, right? With the healthcare, and and then you're going to become wealthy that way. So that's the kind of myth that the unifiers have bought into. So at the lowest level, we've got the implementation level, and then above that, commanding up to $300,000 a year, are unifiers, right? The unification level. Well, those are the two lower levels of value. If you ascend one level higher, you're ascending to the level of communication. Now, these are people who earn money through speaking, right? They're public speakers. These are salespeople, actors, some musicians, right? Artists who are using their voice to generate cash flow. Now, these people can command up to $50 million a year or more in income, right? Just by using their voice, by being communicators. Now, which one sounds like more work to you, right? Could you, like an actor, many times goes out and performs a script, reads a script that someone else wrote, and they get paid millions of dollars for it, right? This is the power of communication level of value, and our society commands, pays a premium for communicators, right? For people who will use their voice to generate money. So that's the communication level of value, right? Not like a lot more work, not a lot more time, but simply by positioning themselves at the higher level of value, able to command a lot more income. You might be asking yourself, okay, that's 3 levels. What's the 4th level of value? Well, the 4th level of value is imagination. These are people who are getting paid for their ideas. You think about like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. I mean, there is no income cap here. The possibilities of what you can make as an Imagineer on the imagination level is absolutely limitless, right? Your ideas can generate more income in minutes than working with your hands could in your entire life, right? So here's what I want you to see. If you want to attract more income and start generating wealth for you and your family, the key is not working harder, it is working higher, ascending the value ladder and commanding more income. Right. And the cool thing about this is that you don't even have to progress through the levels in the order, right? You could just decide today that you are going to be an Imagineer, right? That you are going to be someone who is paid for your ideas, and you're going to start setting aside time to think of new offers, right? To think of things that can add value to the world, to imagine a different world, to imagine different products and different things. These are the ideas that you could skip from implementation level all the way up to the idea level, or you could decide today that you're going to become a communicator, right? And start writing and putting your ideas down to paper and sharing those ideas with the world, right? Finding some sort of platform that you can communicate from. You can become a communicator today and break through the barriers of $60,000 a year or $300,000 a year on the lower levels, all the way up into $50 million a year, just because of a decision that you make today. Hey, look, I think it's interesting that God has actually designed spiritual things to work this way in the world as well. God seems to assign little value to our own work, like to the work that we can do with our own hands and inside of our own effort. And it's interesting to me that because of our strong work ethic, a lot of times in religion, we're always like trying to do things in our own power, trying to do things through our own works, through our own strength, and because that's what we've been taught. Like a strong work ethic is important. But how many of you guys can relate to this? Like that you're always maybe trying to please God, even through the works that you do, and through like trying to do things for God. But a common New Testament theme is actually that we can't add a whole lot of value by doing hard work ourselves. By like the works that we can do don't really add up to much of a hill of beans. That's why the Bible say like our righteousness is like filthy rags, right? Like the things that we can try to do spiritually to make ourselves right before God, it's not, not going to turn out very well. And that's not going to add very much value. In fact, a group of people once asked Jesus in John chapter 6, they said, I'm going to read this, what must we do to do the works that God requires, right? So what is it, like the whole perspective is kind of like, what work do I need to do? What is the implementation things that I need to do to be able to please God, to do the stuff that God requires? And Jesus answered these people in John chapter 6 really curiously, and he says that the work of God is this, right? If you want to please God, this is the work that you need to do, to believe in the one that he sent. So if you really want to please God, then the focus doesn't need to be on what you can do. It doesn't need to be on the work of your own hands, on that implementation level stuff. That's just that's a sideshow. The real value of the work that you can do for God is what you think and what you believe. It's in the imagination realm. And we see this time and time throughout Scripture is that the highest level of value is inside of the imagination level, inside of what we're thinking, inside of what we're believing, inside of what we're seeing in our mind's eye. This is the work that God has called us to, the highest level work, right? You even see it inside of Genesis. This is how the whole world was formed. It started with an idea. It started with God seeing something that was not in existence yet. And then after he saw it, after he had the idea, after he saw it on the visionary level, on the imagination level, then he spoke it out. He communicated it. He said, let there be light. He said, let there be, this, let this happen, let that happen. And the whole world began to form. But God's, beginning was an idea, and then communicating that idea. And then it says that he brought order, right, on the unification level. So he set everything in order. He even set up a garden, all the systems in place, everything to unify things. And finally, he put man inside the garden to work the garden. And so he gave a role for men to play in an implementation level, right? But then he says that I'm going to make these men in our own image, right? So what's the only thing we know about God at that point is that he is a God who saw something and spoke it out, set systems in order, and then put people in place to do the implementation work, right? So even all the Scripture is full of the value of ideas, the value of belief, over the value of just working with our hands, right? And doing things with our hands. So look, I love a good work ethic. I was brought up in South Carolina to believe that like, hey, we do hard work. But I've learned that like hard work does not equate to high income. It doesn't equate to building wealth for your family. You can leave behind for your children's children. Like this type of wealth is built on the higher levels of value, becoming a communicator, becoming, an ideas person. To get paid for your ideas is where we want to move. So, hey, God bless all of the implementers out there and all the hard workers out there and amazing stuff, critical contribution to society. But understand, if you want to be valued and paid on the higher levels, you want to develop the skills of communication and being paid for your ideas, which you can decide to do today. Right? So here is your success challenge of the week. Set aside time this week, even if you could just set aside 1 hour, like put it on your calendar, mark it out, like in this hour, I'm going to set aside thinking time, right? Even if, like I said, even if you just do it for an hour this week, set aside thinking time and commit to yourself to put away all distractions, shut off all of your implementation work, all of your managerial work, and just think of ideas, right? Jot them down somewhere. John Maxwell, said that everybody should have their own ideas notebook, right? Where they're just developing different ideas that they have, writing them out, taking them through different iterations, thinking about them, just thinking. Set aside an hour this week to do that. And I guarantee that 1 hour is eventually going to end up paying you more than all the rest of the hours of the week of doing stuff combined. Right? But listen, guard over that hour, because I found that because we've been so entrenched in doing work, and because we have that strong work ethic drilled into us, our mind is going to tee up all sorts of other implementation and managerial stuff that you should be doing during that time, right? So it's going to be uncomfortable, to just sit down and think. So I want you to be disciplined to protect that hour and see what limitless value that your mind can tee up for you. Well, listen, if you have any questions or anything that I might be able to help you with on a future episode, post them down in the comments. We love to hear from you. My team looks through, the comments and helps to kind of tee them up for future episodes, those ideas that you put in there. So until then, have a great week, and we'll see you in the next episode. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Great businesses and great leaders are built using effective communication. For more, go to speakingschool.com, grab my Elite Business Success Toolkit for free just for trying out our Speaking School membership. That's speakingschool.com. See you next time.